Matthew chapter 1, verse 1, it says in the genealogy of Jesus that he is the son of David and the son of Abraham. Why does it say this? I mean, in the nativity story, we hear that Joseph is his father. So why does it say that he's the son of David and Abraham?
Oh, very tricksy, right?
That's right.
This is why our Old Testaments matter, you guys. This is a really good thing.
But first, let's get it clear. God is the Father, right?
Oh, yeah.
No,
technically,
that's
how that all works, right?
Yeah, I don't really want to have to do that now. But
it's a genealogy, and, I think this is just one of those things that's so important for us to understand the story of the Bible, right?
I feel like whoever submitted this question just deserves credit for actually reading the genealogy section.
We all pass it over.
We all skip them, right? But
I love that. I mean, for me, I think this should be like a wake-up call to all of us for a lot of different reasons. Like, for one, Jesus was not a white guy. Jesus is not American. Jesus was a Jewish man born in a Jewish context, in a Jewish family. And where we find Jesus and where we find our New Testaments is in the middle of this beautiful story that's been unfolding for the nation of Israel. That we see that Jesus is the culmination. He's sort of the launching off point to this new thing that God was doing, or the way that God was actually going to fulfill a promise from all the way back in Genesis 12, right? So I think this is this beautiful picture to understand that, he's the son of David and the son of Abraham, which is tying him to his Jewish roots and tying this story that we have at the beginning of our New Testament to the whole story of the scriptures. So just a couple things, saying you're a son of Abraham was a way of saying that you were a Jewish person. You're part of the nation of Israel, the people of God. It's also interesting, Abraham was the patriarch in the Old Testament who God invited to partner with him so that ultimately from his family there would be a blessing to the entire world. All your dashboard lights should be going off, right? Because through Jesus, there was blessing, there was relationship with God, there was hope and healing and kingdom for everybody, right? Which I think is an awesome thing. So that's the idea with Abraham, with David. David was the king of Israel, who was this sort of the high point of the nation of Israel from a popular perspective. And it was from his line that we're told there was going to be a king that was going to rule and reign through the whole world. And so we see here that, Jesus is this, person who's coming behind Abraham, part of Abraham's line, and he's also specifically from the line of David, who is this king who is going to rule and reign the whole world. So Matthew is he's just painting this beautifully, right? He's showing us that Jesus is the culmination of this blessing that wasn't just for Israel, but for the whole world. And he was going to be this king who's going to rule and reign over the whole world in a new way, righteously and justly. And here's a little dumb fact too. When we talk about Jesus not being a white guy, Jesus also, Christ is not Jesus' last name.
What?
I know, right? I went so long thinking first name Jesus, last name Christ.
Middle name H.
Yeah, that's perfect, right? That's perfect. But Christ is this idea that's tied back to Messiah, which means king. And so every time you see Jesus Christ, it's talking about Jesus the King, or King Jesus, as N.T. Wright, one of my favorite scholars, translates Jesus Christ. And so we're seeing here that in one verse, in Matthew 1:1, in the boring part of the Bible, of the genealogies, we see that Matthew is telling everybody that this Jesus is the culmination of Israel's story. He's the culmination of the Old Testament. He's the son of Abraham, a son of David, and he is the king that you've been longing for and that we need. So I love it. And Joseph, he's along for the ride. He was a faithful guy that stood in, right? Stood in the gaps.
He's a good guy. He did his part. Yeah. The only thing that I would even tag on to that too is it's not exactly in the question, but something that's helpful maybe in understanding this is that the Gospels, or the accounts of Jesus' life, they're not textbook documents like we often think of them. They are certainly eyewitness accounts or based on eyewitness accounts, but each author also brought some purpose behind why they were writing them.
And that's agenda.
A little bit of an agenda, yeah. So that's why Matthew will read so differently than John, because they were speaking to different audiences for different reasons. And one of the big things Matthew set out to do was connect Jesus and his life and his ministry to that promise of the Messiah for the Jewish nation and ultimately for the entire world. And so that's why this is a big deal right at the very beginning. He's essentially, even though it's technical and it's, for many of us here in America, not our history that we kind of have to learn a little bit along the way, it's a big deal because Matthew's basically making the point that God keeps his promises and that he ultimately kept those promises and fulfilled them in Jesus.
That's beautiful. That's awesome.
And so, yeah, I think son of Abraham, son of David, those are important to root Jesus in history, but also to connect him to God's promises and show God's faithfulness throughout generations. And then lucky us, we get invited in too. It's like the great plot twist at the end.
Love it. And then even the Gentiles,
That's right.
even those heathens in Kokomo, Indiana,
That's right.
are invited in. Yeah, I love it so much. Great question. I would also say I love this question because this is one that often people will read and they're confused about, but they're afraid to ask. And you might think it's a dumb question. No, this is beautiful. It's rich, the meaning behind that. So don't be afraid to ask questions, you guys. I think this is such a great practice for us to have, is to not assume things, but to ask the question so that we can begin this process of discovering. And I love that someone asked this question about Matthew 1:1.